So I wanted to get on here real quick and make some prophecy information that I actually found out, and some revelation about seeking God's heart and the meaning of the heart and what truly seeking the Lord's heart entails. And so I was kind of thinking about like different elements and stuff like that, and like God's love and how he created the laws of nature and stuff like that. And I was driving past this tunnel. Somebody had put graffiti, Cobalt Bride. And I had this prophetic dream of being a black lady with vitiligo, which means black and white splotches. And so she was getting ready for a wedding, and she was in front of a mirror, and she was kind of self-conscious about how she looked, and so she decided to not put on makeup. And in the book of Enoch, book number 1, book number 2 and 3 are not canon. They're actually from the devil. But book 1 of Enoch, it says that the fallen angels taught people how to make their appearance look different, like covering themselves with paints or any other thing. Like Satan was a covering cherub of light, and how to wear jewelry and bracelets and stuff like that. Jewelry has a Jew at the beginning of it, jewelry. So jewelry, okay, like ephod, the chest plate right above the chest, the heart, with the high priest. And Christ Jesus, Yeshua Hamashiach, he is our high priest. And the Antichrist is coming in his name to try and take worship and praise. A whole bunch of ego, just the head, not the heart, if you understand what I mean. And Antichrist, the acronym which is AC. And AC is A is 1 and C is 3 in gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, so on and so forth. So, like Michael Jackson, ABC 1, 2, 3, he had vitiligo. It's very big. And so, with this vitiligo, it actually connects to skin melanin, black and white symbology. So, black and white dualism, being good and bad without Christ. We must be holy. It says in the Bible, in Revelation, that New Jerusalem will have no need for light. Literally, will have glorified bodies. And so, with no need for light, it's like the enemy made videos about movies mocking this, about like seeing the infrared spectrum with goggles like the Chronicles of Riddick with Vin Diesel. I think he also played in a movie called Bloodshot, where they put nanobots into his blood, like controlled him like he was an actual living robot kind of thing. So like the heart, it pumps the blood. And so I personally found out the heart is a helix. It's actually one long wrapped around muscle. And so this muscle actually formed in the child's heart, and it starts being at 22 days of conception. So 22 days equals the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, God's word. Okay, so the heart equals 22. God's heart is his word. Okay, and so the Garden of Eden in the center of creation, it wasn't like they renamed the Tigris and Euphrates rivers over in the Middle East, like south east of Turkey. But that wasn't where the Garden of Eden was. It was in the very center of creation. Now, if you look at Gleason's flat earth map, you see Eden, okay, it has 4 different sides with 4 rivers, and the 4 rivers, it literally, Eden, the rivers water the Garden of Eden. And so you have rivers that break out to fingers, and so you have one river breaking out into a finger, and then other fingers, and then watering the Garden of Eden that wraps around the very center of the Lord's creation. And so that's where you heard the Bible or read that Ophir is where gold came from, and these different sections. Okay. And so I watched this channel, forget the name of it. It wasn't Flat Earth Banjo, but another one. I think it was Eric Dubay. So Eric Dubay is another Flat Earth, and he was talking about the mythology of Eden in the center of God's creation, where there's a mountain supposedly called Mount Meru, R-U. So Meru, and they said planes flying over it, it messed with their sensors and stuff like that, like their compass. And I saw this video of a plane flying overhead the middle of creation, and there was it was covered in like a cloud, okay, but it looked like a hurricane. It was circling with a vortex in the center, okay. So you have Eden, and then Adam and Eve. Eve looked at the fruit and listened to the snake, and she saw that she wanted it. She bit the apple of the knowledge of good and evil, and then she knew she was naked. And so after that, they started to procreate, and so that started the line of Cain and Abel, and then that lineage. A lot of people they get it wrong, that it was actually Noah that was told to go forth and multiply after Noah's flood, after God purified creation. And it was actually Adam and Eve in Genesis 4 where God said, all right, well, your labor, your childbirth is going to be very painful, and then all this stuff. Okay, so God set his word around Eden with a flaming sword. Well, who is the Lord flaming sword? God's word is Christ. Christ embodies his word, his flaming sword. So Christ is God in the flesh, surrounding Eden. And so when God brought Israel out of Egypt, Exodus 6:6, the Lord brought Israel out of Egypt with a strong hand. He came with the tabernacle by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. So with Eden being covered by cover, like looks like a hurricane, that's like a pillar of cloud by day. And so they say at the North Pole and the South Pole, well, the South Pole is the ring around creation and the North Pole is the center. You can see the sunlight. So the sun travels around, God's creation under the firmament, Psalms 19:1. The Lord's firmament shows his handiwork, and 19:1 has a 9 plus 2, which is like a 9/11. Okay, so that's where they get 9/11, that ritual against the Lord. Okay, so I found out that the heart is a helix, and it has 4 chambers. So it has the right atrium, which pumps blue blood into the lungs, the left atrium, which pumps red blood into the is the left ventricle, and then it pumps from the right ventricle the blue blood into in from the circulatory system. So you're getting blood coming in from the 2 atriums from above, and then the 2 ventricles from below. So it goes right atrium, left ventricle, left ventricle. So the way the heart works is it actually has 40,000 neurons, and they counted it. Scientists did. So it's like a secondary brain, but the neurons have a function of pumping the heart, keeping it going. So the brain sends a signal to the heart neurons, and then the heart neurons do pump the heart in it's basically it's a vortex, literally a vortex. It's continual energy that's created 22 days of age after conception. And when a child is conceived, literally when the sperm meets the egg, there's a flash of light that comes out with the zinc and the how it interacts with the egg. And so that's the flash of life, if you will. But when somebody dies, it's like it leaves them. So you have life and death, conception and death. Okay, that's the cycle of sin, literally conception and then death. All right, the Lord didn't intend death to begin with. He intended perpetual energy, people living in righteousness and holiness, and then living forever with him. And through Christ, he takes away fallen angel rebellion and not listening to the Lord by you listening to the Lord saying, I'm going to save you the way I meant, is literally you are no longer part of rebellion, being like the fallen angels, knowing of good and evil, and being good and bad without God. And the intention with Eve was she didn't listen to God, and so you reconciled to God the way he pleases in order to listen to him. So you have to listen, okay? So what's interesting is before we even talk, before we breathe, before we see, before we hear. Literally, it's our heart that starts beating. So literally can hear our heart. So literally God's word, you hear the pumping. All right. So it's like God's word, the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the waters of life. All right. And then we have our veins and arteries, and they branch out. They have the main arteries, and then they have the carotid, and I forget what the two arteries with in the neck, but it kind of wraps around, it goes down with the red blood, and then you have the blue blood that goes into the lungs and comes back. And so literally the first pump is pushing the right atrium, the blue blood, into the lungs, and then the left atrium brings the blood back from the lungs to pump into the ventricle, to actually pump it into the body. So it's really interesting. It's like literally the Lord came first, and he's actually giving us our chest compressions. He's the one who automatically controls our heartbeat. And what's interesting is during the sickness worldwide with warp speed, the inflammation actually caused in the brainstem, and the brainstem is what causes your blood to be pumped. It literally controls your heartbeat and your circadian rhythm and your automatic breathing. So the Lord breathes and pumps your heart for you. It's not something that you consciously do. I mean, you can consciously breathe in and out, but there's some things that the Lord does for you that you have no control over. And so literally his life, our life is in his hands, literally his hands. And so if you take hands and you form it, it's like a heart, okay, a physical heart. I personally found out that the heart, it had a term in the Babylonian, the symbol of, the heart, the name of which is Bel. So Bel is their false Babylonian god. So the false heart worship of the mystery Babylon, like the Antichrist. And so you have to, the Lord gives us, when we born through spirit and water, John, the Gospel of John says, with Christ, we have to be born of spirit and water. So that's what baptism means. So the heart pumps literally the life through our body. If we don't have our heart, and everything working together like the body of Christ, then it just doesn't function. And so that's why the Lord said a kingdom divided cannot stand. It's interesting because there's the four corners of the earth, and then there's the heart, which has the atrium, the two atriums and the two ventricles, which is four parts. And so it's a muscle, that's one muscle that's wrapped around, and it does this vortex, okay? And this vortex, this symbol, if you could map it out in 3D, but put it sideways, what is that? That's the figure 8. The figure 8 is the symbol of Meta. So Facebook, with their masks, their covering, they want to put people into a matrix so they can't see, okay? That's what the symbol is the false heart. Being connected to electronics, like Nebuchadnezzar's statue. So Nebuchadnezzar's statue dream was determined by Daniel that the head was the first kingdom, and then you had the shoulders and the butt of silver, and silver is the 47th element. And who is the 47th president? It's the last trump, all right? And so gold head, who has a gold head? The last Trump has blonde hair. He has the gold head. He has the gold bronzer too, which is literally Nebuchadnezzar's waist, made out of bronze, and then the iron legs. And the two iron legs is representative of Revelation 9:11, Abaddon, or Abaddon, or Abad Donald, and who worships Apollo. So he's Apollyon destroyer in New York City. The Big Apple, okay? And so the two legs, they crumbled like iron, all right? And then the feet were made out of clay. In 1 Corinthians 6:19, Christ says the third temple is the body of Christ. And Christ made Adam out of clay. He breathed into his nose, okay? And then started that perpetual motion energy that the Lord holds in his hands and keeps on going. And So through this perpetual motion, he also took the rib from Adam and made Eve. And so it was bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh. And so that's what procreation is. The Lord literally makes people individually, but he has people experience that creation from within them as a symbol of his image. So we're made in his image. And so the center of creation is symbolic of God's heart with four corners, pumping life into creation. And so with flat earth, this Meru, which is like magnetic, they said, magnetism and like light is a wave function. It has polarity, all right? And so I believe the Lord weaved everyone out of light and made, you know, atoms and everything like that. And so you have the atom, it's the smallest particle that's a whole, not a part like an electron. So the atom has electrons spinning around it. Well, the enemy made a lie of the smallest things that the Lord made into the biggest. So that's where you get base lie is like a ball, which is like representative of Baal, the false god. And this ball has electrons spinning around. Well, they say that there's planets with moons spinning around it, and then there's a galaxy with a sun in the center, like the sun god, Apollo, and everything else around it. So literally it's like the worship of the physical flesh and atoms, like Atom Ant and Ant-Man going quantum, all right? So, you know, energy can't be created or destroyed except by the Lord, and the Lord is the one who keeps it in perpetual motion. And so everything revolves around the Lord with his kingdom and his throne, Polaris, and Polaris, it always stays in place. It never moves. And they say the earth always wobbles, but they literally made like the Stonehenge and these different, you know, like the pyramids that pointed to the three stars with Orion. They literally line up perfectly every single year. So, you know, literally the earth isn't moving, right? It's stationary. And so with Mount Meru in the center, it literally has electromagnetism, and light is also electromagnetism. And there is different graphs of the tidal waves, like the moon phases with the tides rising and falling, and they mapped it all out in the whole world, but it turns out that it rises, falls in different areas, so it doesn't follow the moon going around the earth. So the tides actually come in from the center of God's creation, breathing life, the God's waters of life, into the oceans, and that's where the tide comes from. So the waters come in and then they come out through the Lord's four rivers coming out of the center of the Lord's creation that waters the Garden of Eden and then everything else around it. And so it was interesting with these different elements, like cobalt bras, this graffiti that I saw, and CO is cobalt, the 27th periodic element, and then copper is Cu. It's the 29th element in the periodic table. And so you have cobalt and copper. So 27, 7 plus 2 equals 9, and then you have the 29, 9 plus 2 equals 11. You have a 9, 11. You have two C's, Cc, copper, and cobalt and copper. So Cc equals 33, 33 degrees of masonry. Now, a lot of people think that Christ was crucified when he was 33 years old, and that's what it means. But I actually did a whole timeline that the Lord revealed to me of his prophetic timeline. He was actually born 7 BC, and then around 2 BC, when the Magi tipped off the emperor of Rome, there was a new king, and he went to Bethlehem and killed all the children 2 years old or younger, and Christ fled to Nazareth. And so I believe Christ was, I think, let's see, was that 28 years old? I think he was older. I'm going to see here. Christ was baptized in the autumn of 25 AD. So that means, according to Artaxerxes, he was crucified at 32 years old, possibly turning 3 that spring. So when Christ went into the grave, he was in the belly of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. All right? So 33 represents the belly of the beast. B equals 2, 2 B's equals 22. So it literally connects to the belly of the earth, the heart of God's creation and the Lord's judgment, salvation. And so 33 equals hell to the enemy. That's what I found out. And the Antichrist is the cobalt bride, the cobalt and the copper snake on a stick. And the Antichrist was the one who stuck people like a pig. And the Antichrist, the last trump, he also eats pork. I don't know why the Hebrews actually support him, other than just they want the third temple and they're willing to do anything to get it. But he had the warp speed, and it was injected into people's blood, and it changed their... it made another name for a dog. Dog backwards is God, and another name for like a Rottweiler that wears a spike collar is Spike. They called an evil dog Spike. Okay, so Spike in the blood. So it changed the blood in the bloodstream, the heart. Okay, so your circulatory system, into which feeds into the entire of your body. All right, so that's why blue bloods. There's blue blood and red blood. Red and blue, like red Republican and blue Democrat. All right, it's the red pill and the blue pill. All right, you have life and death. That's what it is. There's the 4 corners of the earth, and you have life and death. So literally, the heart is pumping life. The Lord is keeping us alive. All right, like that song, staying alive. That's where they get that from. And so, yeah, he pumps the heart and he keeps us alive. Blue blood and red blood, like black and blue. You have the blue blood, which they say is the lizard people. You know, the blue bloods, like they're reptilian. But reptilian lie is a lie. The devil, he charmed a snake to lie to Eve, and then he literally spread through creation, just like in heaven. He told people, I'm going to be better than God, and then 1/3 of heaven fell down with him. And then literally the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, which is being good and bad without God, is what the devil, the first sin of pride was, and the 1/3 of the angels that fell, that tree was representative of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, of what creation is, and trying to manipulate it to your will, literally to try and destroy and reform into something of your own choosing. That order ab chow, or order out of chaos, means like mincemeat burgers and then forming it into patties, eating it with cheese, mocking the Hebrews not being able eating meat and cheese together. All right, so that's what a burger with bacon. Bacon burger, B equals 22. All right, just like a Red Ryder BB gun in the Christmas Story, or A Christmas Story, the Mandela effect. It's kind of crazy. So, yeah, the Red Ryder BB gun, BB are made out of lead, and lead is literally the 82nd element. Plus 2 equals 10. Judgment. PB is like the Pope getting bronchitis. PB equals peanut butter, like what dogs eat. Being a slave to the system with their collars, all right, on link with the chain. And if the heart is also a helix and it pumps blood throughout the body, what also is a helix? It's DNA. DNA is a helix. It forms a helix. The waters of life, God's patterns of creation. And what is the fallen angels and evil spirits and the people who listen to them, where are they going to be put up? In the lake of burning sulfur. And in DNA, there's a sulfur bridge, which is why the enemy is obsessed with bridges, like the Francis Scott Bridge, and Francis Scott wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. And they, in Isaiah, it says that, you know, Christ, the Lord, would raise a banner, and Christ would be wearing his robe dipped in blood, all right? And so we're covered in his blood instead of the demonic spiritual covering. So Stars and Stripes mocks Christ's stripes on his back. We are healed by his stripes. And the stars represent the fallen angels with the blue firmament. All right? The stars literally are lights that were lights in the firmament watching creation, but then they didn't want to be there anymore, and then they fell and took wives after having physical bodies. All right? And so the helix is the DNA, it has sulfur bridges, and every 10, 5, and 6'5" strand DNA, the ATCG, the coding, you literally have 10, 5, and 6, 5, which equals Yod He Vav He, Yahweh, his name, encoded into our genetics. And so that's why the enemy, he wants to change that. And so through injecting the Antichrist DNA or the beast system DNA, like who is like the beast, all right, the who, all right, the people control your what you can and can't do with your body, especially in the United States. Who is like the beast? Well, the who beast, but I believe the beast is the United Nations, and they'll all come together under one language with their computer translating towers of Babylon around the world with their AI. And that's what Elon Musk wants to do, is make an AI god and literally have it control everything. And so he wants everyone to merge with the beast and be a slave to the system. Just tricks, and you know, that's where they get that from. And so if people were merged with machines, they'd just be plugged in, just like Neo, the chosen one, and they would have a false simulation. They'd experiencing something that wasn't real, and then your body would be used for something else, just like a forced possession, like complete blindness. You can't hear, see, smell anything. For all the people know, they might actually, their bodies might be been doing something else with the fallen angels and the evil spirits possessing them. They don't even know what's happening because they're in their own little world. That's where they get that from. Oh, you're on your own little world kind of thing. And so that's how the enemy mocks creation being possessed, is you're in your own little world. So that's the DNA. And also with the 33, with the Christ being in the belly of earth for 3 days and 3 nights, I found out that the 33rd periodic element is arsenic. And arsenic is poisonous. It's like mesothelioma with, you know, those people who are, you know, putting in insulation. And what happened when the towers fell down in 9/11? Literally all the smoke and everything, you know, came down, and it choked people who were around it. And it also killed the people who were inside. It's like a world. I can't really say that right here. I don't want to be censored. Yeah. Let's see. There were 3 buildings, and 2 of them went down, and the 3rd never had a plane hit it. And they said it was a fire. And a fire is, when it unintentionally, is called arson, like arsenic. All right? So there's also a term called arsenokoite, coined by Greeks, which is a different type of love, okay? So the Greeks, they had a philosophy of agape love, which is just general love, and then a stoic or something, and like personal love, and then arsenokoite is love for small children, especially boys, okay? Not the way God created Sodom and Gomorrah, perversion. And what happened with Sodom and Gomorrah? It was literally burnt with burning sulfur by the Lord. Okay, so arsenokoite, our son, like the Antichrist, literally the buildings with fire, okay? So what happens when there's a fire in a building? You look for the exit, all right? So the point of a rabbit hole is to try and not go down to the bottom of the rabbit hole to find out that you're already in a rabbit hole in order to find out how to get out of it. Okay, that's the point of it. You know, people be pulled out of the false world system, the false beast system, mystery bond in the world that's being set up, and it's certainly being digitized right now in order to be automated, just like chickens in hatchery. You have chick hatcheries, and they literally take them, and then, you know, they cut off the tip of their beak, and then they put them onto a machine. It pokes them and gives them inoculation, and then they just throw the chicks, the males on the left and the females on the right. Okay, and then all these chicks, the females, they want them for eggs, egg production. The males, they form them into roosters. And so what they do is they literally go onto a conveyor belt, and they literally get ground up alive and be turned into animal feed. All right, so this animal feed is turned into cat food, dog food, and different feed for different animals. All right, and ground meat is like mincemeat, like Hamburg steak, like Germany. All right, ordo ab chao, order out of chaos, mincing something like God's word, his flesh and his blood, which he says is true food and true drink. mincing it up into something that is scrabbled, like, you know, a game of Scrabble, like scrambling an egg. Like they say your brain on drugs is like, you know, your brain is like a fried egg. That's what they say. And when you accept Christ, the Lord actually brings you out of everything, and he puts all the pieces together. So everyone is, you know, they don't know what's going on in the world, but then when they accept Christ, the Lord allows children to make sense out of it, and they see the entire picture, they see all the puzzle pieces, and the Lord allows them to put all the pieces together in order to see what's happening. Literally, instead of just, you know, having, you know, horse blinders of your head and you're just looking down and you're working, you know. So the enemy really has people work and do things like go to war for patriotism, and patriotism equals pride, which was the original sin. I mean, there's the pride, which is being flagrant and what they call gay, is they used to call it happy, but now it's the Sodom and Gomorrah pride movement with their pride parades. All right, but then there's a different form of pride, which is patriotism and ego, and going to war for no reason other than to control the population. All right, in order to get what they want. And kind of like King David, he actually wanted the Hittite's wife, and so he sent him out to war to be killed intentionally on accident, but he actually set up his death intentionally by putting him in the front lines when he wasn't actually, you know, an experienced warrior. But when he died, the Lord said, hey, that wasn't right. And then David's son, Absalom, tried to take over the kingdom, which is representative of the Antichrist. All right, and then his thicket of hair, which was around 22 pounds, okay, which is representative of God's word, or maybe it was 30 pounds, maybe representative of the silver shekels, silver coins that Judas took. But he tried to flee from David's commander on a donkey. He strode into Jerusalem on a donkey's colt, representative of him being this humble servant. And so Absalom, David's son, was a prophetic symbol of Christ, like Judah, David, and then the Antichrist, which is Absalom. All right, and so he got his hair caught on an oak, and Elon in Hebrew means oak tree. So you have Nebuchadnezzar's gold head, and then you have his you know, silver body, which is representative of the last trump, with his bronzer and the orange copper, the bronze waist, and then the legs, which is representative of 9/11. And so Revelation 11, Abaddon, the one who injects, you know, his DNA or whatever it is into the body of people, and so Absalom literally got stabbed in the heart by the king of Jerusalem's, David's commander, and that was representative, you know, of, you know, the Antichrist, you know, God's heart being, you know, false heart being stabbed to death, and then the king of Jerusalem, Judah, was reinstated after he had sinned against the Lord. And it's the journey of life, really. Trying to think if there's anything else. Oh yeah, Elon, Hebrew, and Elon means oak. And so if Absalom was hanging on an oak tree by his hair, what is the last trump Elon trying to make? So the false prophet is literally trying to make the Neuralink. And what happens when they put the Neuralink in the brain? They take a portal, a chunk of skull, take it out of the head, and then they put in the Neuralink, which has gold electrodes. And in Revelations, it says that the beast, you know, scorpions, had mouths like lions and women's hair. And so they had red, fiery red, blue, and gold. And blue and gold represents the Freemason colors, and then red equals war, like the red horse. All right? And so, you know, you have the white horse with Abaddon. The white horse has a crown, and crown means corona. And then he has a bow and arrows, like Cupid, shooting people arms with his warp speed. And, you know, making people fall in love with the Antichrist beast system by blinding them. And finally, it will culminate in the final mark of the beast. And all these prior steps are steps that people take and make it harder for people to, in order to come out of the system. Come out of her, my people. Mystery Babylon. And so, yeah, these golden transistors, electrodes, layers that they're going to poke into the brain is what they did, and one person already got it, and it allows him to move a cursor on a computer screen, and the pointer, called a cursor, like a Ouija board. Okay, you have the planchette, which is a cursor, and spirits make people move it around to make a message, and so it's literally like a Ouija witchcraft, like connecting straight to the brain, which is like temple. All right, that's why right here is the temple. All right, you have Judah, the king of Israel, and then Absalom, like the Antichrist. And what is that symbol? Pew, pew, pew. Okay, that's the Antichrist head wound, just like the last trump on July 13th on Caesar's birthday got shot, and then he had 2 lines of spittle of blood on his face that looked like a snake's, the forked tongue, right, coming off of his face. And somehow when he was being scrambled in order to get out of there, he said, I need to get my shoes. Why would he take off his shoes? Because in Leviticus 14, there's literally a ritual where the high priest had to put blood from the sacrifice, earlobe, his right thumb, and his right toe. And so representing the right versus the left. The goats will be put on the left and the sheep on Christ's right. Okay? Just like the repentant thief on the cross, Christ's, I believe, right, and then the unrepentant thief on the cross that denied Christ on his left. The sheep's versus the goats. Okay? Left and right paradigm. That's divide and conquer is what the enemy uses. The red and blue paradigm, 2 sides of the same coin. And so, what head, what face do they put on, for the temple tax, or paying taxes to Caesar? They put Caesar's head on there. And the Temple Institute, they literally put coin with Trump's head on it. All right, a golden coin, and so, oh yeah, but in Ezekiel, the 3rd temple, it literally says that people would come in one way and out the other. All right, and then the prince would enter in from the east side, just like Christ. And so coming in from one side out the other is like how blood is. And then it says that from the east side on the south point, water would be coming out of the middle of the temple going through into the Red Sea, which would bring back life. It's filled with a lot of salt to saline, and so it can't support life right now, but it has to have an even balance in order to support saltwater fish and or freshwater fish. So that's what New Jerusalem is. So New Jerusalem will come down. I believe it's going to be in the center of creation, and it's 144,000 cubits, or I forget the. Oh, I'm going to look here real quick. It's 144,000 cubits. 14,400 cubits. So that's the 144,000. All right. So 1,500 miles wide, 1,500 miles long, and 1,500 miles high. And so according to this old encyclopedia, the firmament is only like 12 miles high around McMurdo Station in Antarctica, around the outer ring. But in the center, it's around, I think, 100 miles high, because the Go Fast rocket that literally was shot up over Nevada, it flew 72 miles and then hit the firmament, hit something, and it fell right back down. So 72 miles of Nevada, if you go a little bit more into the center, might be 100 miles high, is what the firmament is. It's like a convex, like a magnifying glass, like the top of a pocket watch. And I recently found out that the Wizard of Oz was encoded, the book, into DNA. It was a ritual. So they encoded the entire book into strands of DNA. And so this Wizard of Oz book, you have Dorothy, which she had her house lifted up by a tornado, and then she supposedly hit her head like a head wound. All right, and then she woke up at the end of the movie. So you have the Cowardly Lion, which needs bravery, so he got an award at the end. You have the Tin Man, who needed a heart, so he was given a pocket watch that ticked. So, and then you had the Straw Man, which was who wanted a brain. So when the Straw Man is poked with like hay or chaff, it's like being connected to AI, their beast system. And so having the Neuralink is like having a brain. And then when Adam and Eve ate the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, that started their genetic time clock ticking. And so that's wrote the beginning of their end, and then Christ saves us from dying with our glorified bodies. This flesh may perish. So Christ says, don't be worried what the enemy might do to your flesh, but what the Lord can do to your flesh and your soul in hell. All right, so frying to death for eternity. Not going to do that. No to frying to, yes to Christ. In the lake of burning sulfur. And so you have a tin man, and it started his heart ticking. All right, so a ticking heart is like, an engine not running. All right, if your heart isn't ticking right, it doesn't run properly. All right, just like having a heart attack. And then the straw man is like Haman, like the hay man. And they have the wheat and the chaff at the end, and the wheat will be gathered into the barn and the chaff will be burned. Well, there's different cycles, different ways that you have to winnow the wheat. So literally it's grown, cut off, and then you take the dried wheat and then it's pounded and hit, and then it separates from the stalk, and then the surrounding chaff around it, and then that's taken away, and then at the end stage you have the winnowing, where you actually the grain is actually heavier than the chaff, and so it's blown out, and the stuff that is wishy-washy is just blown away, and then everything else, the chaff will be burned at the end of the age. And the wheat is remained gathered into the Lord's barn, which is representative of the harpazo, the mystery snatching away of the bride. All right, and so that's where I think that the cobalt bride came from. Is that graffiti that I saw is copper and cobalt and copper. So COCU 27 equals 9, and then 29 which equals 11, 9/11. And so the last Trump, he was president number 45, and 4 plus 5 equals 9, and he's also president 47, and 7 plus 4 equals 11. So it's that there are two 9/11s right there. All right, so the demonic bride versus the Antichrist, right? And that's it all connects, really. If you have any questions or concerns, you can put your comments down below. But I just wanted to put this out prophetically. It seems like we are very close to the very end of the age. All right, and the Lord is coming very soon, and either he's gonna come with punishment, and he's gonna say, "Get away from me, I never knew you." If these people were prophesying in his name, they denied the power thereof. Or he'll say, "Well done, faithful servant, come and be with the husband, with the bride." And so these things, like even the periodic elements, like Breaking Bad. All right, so like Breaking Bad, I drove past this fast food restaurant called Breaking Buns. And literally there was like an Asian bun place, like a steamed buns. And so they were making steamed buns, like with pork in it, which is representative of mocking Christ's bread of life. And the enemy mocks the Lord with everything, and even uses the Lord's children through what they feel like they want to do, or what the enemy tries to make them feel like they want to do, in order to do things that aren't necessarily bad, but it's also a ritual against the Lord. So you just have to have the wisdom, knowledge, and discernment. And wisdom isn't knowing right from wrong, from almost right. And almost all of creation is a setup against the Lord's children. But the devil might say, "Hey, you don't deserve to be saved. You're a sinner. You're wicked. Blah blah blah." But the Lord came and died for us anyways. So I found out that the devil, through his trick, he uses words that are technically true, but not in the perspective of grace and mercy and salvation. And a lot of it is just jargon, word. The enemy tries to scramble what things mean, and the truth of what things are is what it is, the Lord's. And so the enemy made a different term called meaning, like mean in G, like inside the false G, false little gods, right? So mean is being not nice, being naughty, like Santa with Christmas equals Satan. And I know that Nebuchadnezzar had a different dream of a tree standing, and then it was cut down, and it had a bronze ring and a silver ring. And so the bronze and the silver represents like Nebuchadnezzar's statue, which the Antichrist embodies. with the gold head, the silver body, 47th element, 47th president, and then you have the bronzer with the bronze waist and the 2 iron legs, and clay and iron, mixing iron with technology, turning people's blood into GMOs, which is blood connected to God's heart, his creation, his body, and people, we are made in God's image. And so every single part of us has a prophetic meaning, like hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, tongue, speaking, teeth, everything, all right, including a heart, our internal organs. So the enemy uses all that against the Lord in demonic rituals, all right, like, what was her name? Marina Abramovich and spirit cooking. Did a reveal about that on my channel, and I saw the video, it's disturbing. And the Lord literally said that he put me into this world to judge through sight, and how wicked they become as calibrates the scales. And so my entire experience is experiencing how wicked people are, but then the Lord also said, anyone who denies my son is wicked. So anyone says that they accept the Lord but they don't is wicked, and anyone who denies the Lord outright or doesn't accept him in the first place is also wicked. And they will all be grouped with the fallen angels and evil spirits, and they'll be burned in the lake of sulfur for eternity. And the smoke of their torment will go up forever. Ever. I mean, I wouldn't want that upon anyone, but I'm not going to have the spirits of idealism nor negativity. No sympathy for the devil, all right? And, but yeah, with the tree, Nebuchadnezzar's tree literally is representative of, you know, the silver and bronze ring, like they have people with marriage. Like they put rings on the ring finger, they put the ring on the ring, and they get married, and then, you know, the bride has the veil and takes it off of her face, which is mocking Christ's veil, all right, his torn veil when he died on the cross. And Christ, his blood and his flesh became true drink and true flesh food, and accepting him, we accept his blood, and we're covered by his sacrifice. So we're forgiven of our sins, past, present, and future, as long as we're seeking his heart with all of our mind, soul, body, spirit, strength, until our death or the day of the rapture, and that's the only way. Lordship salvation. And through our heart, he allows us to be again through spirit and water, just like in John, Christ said, unless you're born with water, you can't enter into heaven. So that's why you need to be reborn of his spirit, accept him, and then be water baptized. It's not about necessarily the actual physical baptism, or just saying, oh yeah, Lord, I accept you, but it's the meaning it from your heart, and then being obedient, and through your obedience, that literally breaks the fallen angel rebellion. And so through that you're saved. And a lot of people, the enemy, sends false prophets, wolves, saying, oh, once saved, always saved. You can sin. No, the Lord transforms you, and he brings people up out of sinning. And as long as we're true in heart, literally the fruits will manifest through him working through us, and we'll sin less, we'll do more works, even though works aren't required. It's just part of being righteous, instead of being under the curse of the law, which is being told what to do instead of doing something right to begin with, because you want to, instead of being told to. That's the difference between being reborn in Christ and not. King David, he did what the Lord wanted and sought his heart with all his mind, soul, body, spirit, and flesh. And then the Pharisees, they lauded around and tried to put in rules and regulations without any grace or mercy, and saying, all right, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. I don't care if you become homeless. You have to do this, or else you're not being of the Lord, kind of thing. And that's why when Christ and the apostles walking through the grain field of wheat, not corn, the Lord rebuked the Mandela effect. No to the children of the corn. Literally, they took the heads of wheat and they ate it, and they're like, you're harvesting grain. Well, King David went in and was starving, and his men asked for the showbread. And that's what Christ said. All right, I'm Lord of the Sabbath, and I'm allowing them to do this because it's furthering what I want, which is grace, mercy, and salvation, instead of just saying, all right, you need to starve today, which is representative of the mark of the beast. You can't buy or sell or have a job unless you get it. So do you want to be part of the Lord's righteousness and be provided for, or do you want to get the mark of the beast and just be provided, have the time of pleasure right now in this short life and that be it? No, a lot of people They only think about pleasure, and that's what the enemy thinks about when they're possessing people is we want pleasure, we want pleasure, we want pleasure before we die, before we burn forever. And that's why when they possess people, they try and make people perverted, doing rituals against the Lord because they hate him, because they want what they want, and they say, screw the Lord. All right? So they literally want to do what they want, and they want to possess people's bodies and experience pleasure through people's bodies. That's why the Lord said, if these spirits are controlling you uncontrollably, then that's the way you have to do it. You have to pray and fast. And there's different spirits who come out in different ways, prophetically, according to the Lord's prophecy, the way he pleases. And so if we do things in the patterns in the way the Lord wants, he is faithful to forgive us and deliver us from all our maladies. And that's what I pray for me. You know, take the log, most speck out of my own eye first, and then I pray that for other people. All right? So, once saved, always saved. Yes and no. All right? So, you can be saved and always be saved if you really accepted the Lord. But if you're not doing what he wants, he's going to chastise you. And what kind of life is that going to give you? He's literally going to put every obstacle in your way, and you're going to start to not have provision, no food, no happiness. He's literally going to try to take everything away. And so, me personally, I found that the Lord rebuke you, evil spirit. Get out and away from me in the name of Yeshua Hamashiach. Yeah, me personally, when I'm alone, instead of people watching me, I pray for my true brothers and sisters to pray for me. But when I'm alone, this evil spirit, it tries to think that I'm isolated, and when I'm like driving around, and it's who knows, it might actually be the enemy himself, trying to oppose me, what the Lord is trying to do through me. But they literally, like whenever I mention 2 Kings 2 with Elisha and the 42 wicked children and how it connects to bears, and their bear symbol of the stuffed teddy bear and sexual perversion with children, literally whenever I mention anything 2 King 2 with the 42 wicked children with Elijah, the enemy or an evil spirit tries to come in upon me and make me scream. And representative of this movie called Annihilation, where the bear actually came in, and in Annihilation, the movie, all the plants and animals, genetic, and humans were actually being messed and altered with, and by an alien, like a fallen angel, is what aliens are. Space is fake. But this bear, it mauled one of the women, and then the woman's consciousness kind of went to the bear, and so the bear actually was starting to rot while it was alive, and its nose was rotted off, and it screamed, woman scream. So that's the prophecy of that. So the enemy tries to do an opposite ritual to every single thing the Lord has me expose. And I'm personally getting sick of it. The Lord rebuke you. But please pray for me. If you're true in heart and true in spirit and true in mind, I pray. But yeah, the enemy also tries to move my head around. Like when I'm trying to do something, they try and do the opposite. Like if I want to do something, they try and make me feel like I don't want to do it. But then if I don't want to do something, they try and make me feel like it's all opposite. But I'm going, and all of a sudden this evil spirit tries to go like this. And like, ugh, like it's trying to point things out, like, look at there, look at that, look at this kind of thing. It's like a mockery of Eve seeing a freak. They want to control what I see, what I hear, and what I think. And so I drive past something, and they're like, oh, look at that billboard, because we want you to, intrusive thoughts and feelings. That's what they want. They literally want to control people's lives in order to alter their trajectory, in order to keep them from, actually finding salvation and following Christ's straight and narrow path through faith. And so that's what the enemy's trying to do, is make a portal into people's brains. That's where portal comes from, the term Rick and Morty, different dimensions. There's no alternate realities like Doctor Strange, but what they're trying to do is they're intentionally trying to form creation to make a system like the Matrix and plug everyone in, not just physically and spiritually possession, but actually physically with mixing clay with iron, clay bodies with iron technology, in order to determine with absolute accuracy where the trajectory of creation is going to go, and what people can do and what they can't do, and what they can think and can't think, like the Minority Report and pre-crime, okay? most crime right now, people who haven't accepted the Lord, it's all pre-planned by them anyways, but they want to rule creation with intention against how the Lord made and how he wants creation to be. That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to connect to quantum computing, like the Mandela effect, like that movie, The Butterfly Effect, like the, and decrease people's choices so they have to go along with it. And so it's like, all right, you can have A, B, or C, but they're denying D to Z, okay? And, yeah, spelling different words and stuff like that. They're literally, they're trying to form what words people speak and what they mean. What's actually, what they're saying is people have an intent to say one thing and they one thing, but they're saying another. It's like a child, they don't know how to pronounce T, so they say F. And so it's saying fire truck, they say fire F-U, the F word, okay? So fire instead of truck, okay? So, it's like the stealing, killing, destroying, and defiling language and meaning in order to have something actually mean something else than what it actually means. So it's like what people say in English, like Old English, kids equals baby goats, but they call kids children. So children is goats to the enemy. And when a child is born, they call the child a bundle of joy. Well, what is the Lord going to do with the check? Going to gather it up into bundles and then burn it. So that's like their Moloch statue, taking children and placing it on the Moloch statue and burning them alive. It's a bundle of joy. They want to burn the children alive, like the Wicker Man. All right? And kid equals goat, and baby equals Babylon. And it's little ones, like Christ said, children. All right? So the enemy tries to make people speak one way, but it actually means one thing to the enemy, and then it means another thing to people. And so when people say certain things, it's like a big joke to them. It's like, all right, you know, oh, they said kid, it's a baby goat. They're saying that, oh yeah, they want their child to be a baby goat, and you know, the goats will be put on the right. No, not the right. The goats will be put on the left, and the sheep will be put on the right. And so the goats will be thrown into hell, and the sheep will be taken with the Lord. He's the shepherd of the flock. And so that's why they say, yeah, getting the flock out of here. And Christ is coming soon. Like coming soon attractions, like movies, like they try to, you know, spellcast on with music, make them feel a certain way and think a certain way with music. Like aggressive music, people feel aggravated and angry and like to destroy things. So that's what the enemy tries to do, is try and make words, try and project it on people in order to try and control people. So that's where it comes from, is words with commands with hidden and secret meanings is how they try and control the populace through possession right now, because the word is a living word, and the word is actually how God made creation. So our bodies are a form and function and pattern of the way God made in his image, but if we have different words and we have a different platform, instead of being our firm foundation, it's like we're debased, and they try and people with sound patterns, like commands, like the king's speech. And the Antichrist king's speech is what they're trying to control people. It's a harpy or a siren trying to sing lullabies to people to put them to sleep, or try and control what they want, because they want to use people like some kind of tax farm. But instead of it being with, you know, physical money, they want to do it digitally and have it all automated and turn it into a technological autocracy or oligarchy, with, you know, the neo-aristocrats at the top, with the devil at the top of the pyramid with his all-seeing eye. With a whole bunch of cameras everywhere, watching everything. Like this movie that I watched called Infinity Prison. Yeah, I had this AI with this thing watching people. And they were like trying to, this person was just put in, it was like a prison, but it actually was just one room, and it provided food, water, and shelter. But the person was stuck there for life. It was like a life sentence. So the life sentence is, you know, spiritually indicative of AI control. and then they'll actually be able to mess with people's genes and actually keep them from dying by having them on life support continually. So people will die, but they won't be able to. That's what Revelation says. And so once the enemy starts tampering with people's genetics and starts connecting them to electronics, it's like an artificial life support. And once they got you, it's like, it's not nice. But me personally, I know that there's always more that the Lord, prophecy and revelation the Lord shows me. And me personally, I like to just get it out there. The Lord, gives me the feeling that I need to, just spread the Lord's word, the truth, the secret meanings behind things. And oh yeah, I left off at Nebuchadnezzar's tree. Yeah, so Nebuchadnezzar's tree with the ring. So the tree was cut down, and then Nebuchadnezzar had his sanity taken from him, his consciousness. And so free will is held by the Lord, and we live and move inside the Lord's creation. And so a lot of people don't know that the Lord is, and so they've forgotten him. That's what happens when you live your day-to-day life and you forget that he is the platform on which we exist, including every single atom and every single wavelength of light and all of the laws of creation, which is the laws of nature, which they call, and scientism actually turned the laws of nature into the golden rule, into mutual symbiotic relationships, which literally is just, but I personally found out that science, using, technology in order to try and, control creation is what they're trying to do, is they can't control creation spiritually, so they're trying to use people and coerce them to control people with technology indirectly, because the Lord did away with magic, and so they have to try and find a way around it. Instead of spiritual children, Nephilim that grew into giants and ate people, they want to terraform people's genetics by having them listen to them and then, paying the price. Okay, so they're trying to make everything, like artificial Nephilim, artificial bodies, artificial, robots. And so with Nebuchadnezzar having his free will taken away, as a representative of being connected to electronics, with the brain, with the gold, a Neuralink, the of hair put into the brain with the gold electrodes. And so the gold electrodes technology is like the golden head and the clay feet with iron technology. So they're trying to connect the technology with gold to the head to make the head connected to the feet. So it's like an Ouroboros, like a snake eating its own tail. Symbology is that what they're trying to do. Elon Musk, that means oak, and Absalom hung on the oak tree by his hair, and then he was stabbed to death in the heart. And so people aren't seeking the Lord's heart. They're going to fall for the enemy's lies, and they're going to be part of the enemy's experiments, the gene editing and the mark of the beast, and the, connecting to the brain with the chunk of portal. And the head is representative of like an eggshell. So the eggshell is like, taken out like cracking an eggshell. So your brain on drugs is like fried egg. And so if people don't have their, free will, it's like a collective consciousness, and they're being told what to do and they can't deviate. And so they're controlling creation that way, that they want to absolutely, in order to control its trajectory, in order to fight against God. But then the Lord will say one word and it'll all be over. And the Lord said his children will rule over the nations with an iron rod. And the iron rod comes from Christ's mouth, and he'll smash the nations like clay pots. And so the Lord, his word, speaks through his children, and the Lord is with his children. And so literally, it's not necessarily a hive mind, but actually being righteousness, born again, and being part of the Lord's body. And the enemy's trying to make his own version, which is a hive mind mentality. And so a tree is representative of the brainstem with the trunk, and then the leaf, the brain, which is the neurons. So in autumn, the leaves fall, like the tabernacles. And the tree also, I found out that the broom tree, where the Israelites in the desert sought aid they used it to build the tabernacle, and it might have been Moses' burning bush. And so it's very prophetic. And so the enemy made witches' brooms, like the broom tree, and they used broom tree leaves to sweep out the tabernacle and clean it. So it's all a mockery. All right, so the broom tree. And so they literally want to, complain. And the burning bush is like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It didn't burn them. Right? So when you accept the Lord, instead of bowing down to the Nebuchadnezzar's beast statue, you are saved, and the Lord is faithful. If you repent and you're truly seeking his heart, save you. And so, yeah, free will isn't our own. It's a gift from the Lord. And a lot of people think that, oh, I do all my own by my own effort, and it's, by the sweat of my brow, like that video game BioShock, where they made a dome underneath the ocean, like Atlantis, which is God's firmament. And so the brainstem with the leaves represented the neurons, and then a tornado actually is representative of a brainstem. So what controls the body. So a tornado comes down and it has this vortex, and it literally has some circling patterns up above, and then it has the vortex that comes down like the Wizard of Oz, like picking up Dorothy's house and then bringing it back down. And then her waking up because of a head wound, or she was unconscious, like the Antichrist head wound. So it all connects. It's all prophetic. Trying to think if there's anything else now. There's just so much. I mean, I could probably talk about all of the stuff, but then I'd be on here for hours and hours and hours on end. And some people who come in later watching, the live stream, they might actually think, oh, well, where is he coming from and where is he going? But then they have to go back to the very beginning to understand what I was talking about, because the information I said before set the precedence. And so, the enemy tries to confuse people by making everything a puzzle and scrambling the Lord's meaning of creation, like the game school, like a board game. So he takes different meanings for different letters and words, and then changes it to form different patterns and different meanings that aren't the Lord's. And so you have the Scrabble meaning, like a scrambled egg. They want to scramble creation, like the Oval Office, and an egg is oval, and the white horse, right? The white Abaddon with the crown corona, riding the white horse with his bow and arrow, stinging people, like stinging locusts. So anyone who got stung with bead literally has evil spirits speaking through them, whether or not they know it. It might just be a regular, everyday, day to them, but the words they speak might actually have an ulterior motive, an ulterior meaning to people around them, especially when the people come around children of God like myself. And so it's the perspective of a child of God sees what's happening, and the other people, they think it's just another day. Like one time I actually, earlier today actually, the Lord showed me the revelation of the 33 3 nights in the 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth after Christ died. So 33 Freemasonry. And right before I had this live stream, I literally got a person who went to an address 3330 33rd Street. And so the enemy has all these rituals of as above, so below. To that person, they were just drunk and needing to get home. But to me, I knew what the meaning was, because the Lord had revealed to me what 33 meant and their 33 symbology. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of people, they have spiritual and emotional baggage, and they're speaking, but sometimes the spirits speak through them in cryptic meanings and languages, and only the children of God know what it actually means in order to decipher it. And so that's the reason why Christ said, if you're neither for me nor against me, you're already working against me. So being lukewarm, like the lukewarm church of Laodicea, you're neither hot nor cold, the Lord will spit you out of his mouth, instead of being cooling and refreshing to the church, or warm and revitalizing and preaching the word, the Lord's word to the lost, trying to be saved. So refreshing water, anyone who brings a cup of water in my name will be saved. So literally it's becoming part of the church and helping the body of church that are actually saved, congregation or online congregation, or being revitalizing to the church and, The cold water represents saving people. So you preaching the gospel to someone, and then the warm water represents revitalization of the body of the congregation that you're in. Right now, the congregations are very few and far in between. A lot of children of God are, by faith, being provided for, like myself. Thank the Lord. He's still providing for me. He's faithful. You know, he provides for the birds of the air. How much more his children? I mean, flowers of the field, they bloom, and, you know, they come and gone, and they're dressed more beautifully than any person, really. But the Lord provides, you know, a spiritual covering, clothes over our body, food, water, shelter, love, holiness, rebirth, and salvation to begin with, and then everything else, good works, and, you know, being a holy child of God. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a separation of the wheat and the tares, and the Lord is, judgment comes from in the church first, and so what we're seeing is a lot of people who accepted the world are really carnal Christians who got the warp speed, and their brains are tinkered with, and they're possessed by the enemy, and they're still part of the church, and the enemy is sprinkling in lies and half-truths and partial truths or even whole lies into a lot of church buildings. And what is a church building made of? It's the people who come in and attend church, and so it's the spiritual body of people, and a lot of different churches are ran by different evil principalities and powers. Just like this one congregation I just saw online, there was a person I was talking to named Pedro of 4TN, and he was talking about, yeah, have you seen this church? And there was this congregation leader who led his entire church into Islam. And literally, I posted it on my community page, but he's completely blackface, and he went up to some mountain Middle Eastern place, and he was wearing all complete white robes like he was some kind of Messiah, and then he bowed down on the ground and said, "This is holy." Like, that's not a person of the Lord. And all these people were probably already compromised to begin with, and so once everything was compromised, he took the entire congregation, took them from one place, put them in another. And so literally the church was converted to Islam instead of Christianity. But were they for the Lord in the first place, or were they just all being led off a cliff? Like the Lion King. Okay, the Lion King. It's like the Lion King was the Antichrist. Okay, like Scar. But Scar is the bad representation, and Simba is the good representation, being good and bad without God. So, who is the king, the Lion of Judah? Yeshua Hamashiach, Christ, Yehoshua, the Lord, God in the flesh. He is the righteous king, all right? Symbolically, is the Lion. All right? And, yeah, that kind of ties into this prophetic dream that I had of the black lady Ligo, and then she went up to the podium, and then he took 3 veils off of her face, which is like the unholy trinity, and there was a completely black face with a white Cheshire cat grin, like the Alice Land. And so it was like the demonic bride, and then the Christ was the demonic antichrist, the false Jesus, the white-skinned, like, what was it, Jonathan Romy in The Chosen. All right? And the entire congregation that was attending ran off in my prophetic dream, and it was just him and her. But I was in the perspective of her, but then I went to the perspective of him. And then after that, I was in the perspective of third person. So I was outside of her and him. So I was seeing them both standing at the podium at the wedding altar, and the entire congregation ran off, and I was just watching, like, right, there's the demonic bride and groom right there in front of me. And so and it tries to have children of God embody evil, or trying to think of a reference. Yeah, I can't think of it right now, but yeah, Melanin with Michael Jackson, ABC 123. You know, he was a child, and then had the skin pigment vitiligo, and then he turned white. All right, so that's black and white symbolism. So you have the black and white symbolism, and then black and white symbolism is like civil war. All right, so you have civil war in the United States, the North versus the South. So you have the North and the South, and the South was fighting for slavery, and the North was fighting for, freedom. And so with Abraham Lincoln Abraham Lincoln actually took a lot of, he took powers that weren't necessarily constitutional, but it was still oversaw by the government, like the judicial and, you know, legislative branch or whatever. And so he took power, and then he was able to, the North won against the South. And so right now you have a tariff trade war, the North versus the South, like the United States versus Canada. And so it kind of goes along the, they want the Club of Rome, the 10 kings, they want 10 kingdoms. And so they want the kingdoms, and they want America and Canada and Greenland and Mexico, like north of the Panama Canal. That's why they want the Panama Canal. It's like a birthing, like a demonic birth, like the dragon. You know, that's why they renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the America. It's like the dragon with his mouth, with a flood from the dragon's mouth, trying to eat the child as they were born from the woman giving birth. And that was representative of Christ when he was born in Bethlehem, and then they killed all the children 2 years and younger because the Magi tipped the king off that thing, and so he fled to Nazareth. So the canal is like the birthing of the Antichrist, and that's why the Antichrist is very adamant about getting the Panama Canal. All right, PC is like a personal computer, and CP is PC is backwards is C, which is a term for predation, like on a personal computer. So that's where that is. All right. So 33rd element is arsenic, like arson, arsenokoite, is literally little boy love. It's a little boy love is literally like, you know, PC and then CP backwards. That's how they get that, the ritual, right? Like the dragon trying to eat the child right as they are born. So that child predation. And predation literally means BC, before Christ. Predating Christ, like Sodom or a pride movement, perversion. And arsenokoite, arson, like arsenic, which is poisonous, is like arson, like burning Sodom and Gomorrah to the ground. Well, there's that 33 connection right there. And so that's why in IPEC 02 you have the Antichrist coming up out of, you know, the smoke and then getting rid of all the politicians. And that's what the Antichrist is doing. They're literally trying to gut the state and then make their AI governance. And they want the 10 kings, which literally I believe the Antichrist is the head of the 10 kings, and his wife is Jezebel, the harlot riding the beast. Okay? That's what the last Trump is doing. So the harlot will ride the beast set up, and then she'll become drunk with the blood of the martyrs of the Christians, the true children of God, beheaded, separated from the heart, the body. And the head being separated from the body is like their technological automation of all things, like Amazon and their palm reading. Okay? So Amazon has palm reading things. It's like biometrics, like your face scan, retina scan, face scan, in order to pay for things. And that's why you have to come out of her, my people, come out of Mystery Babylon, Christ says, is don't become conformed to this world. Don't conform to the automation or, you know, the intrusive, you know, face scanning, all that stuff. But the palm reading, it connects to Jezebel with King Ahab. So Ahab was a wicked king, and he gave in to Jezebel, and Jezebel killed all of God's prophets. And so when all of God's prophets, except for Elijah and Elisha, and actually there was one person who hid some prophets, like 100 prophets in a cave, who went out to greet Elijah when he went to confront Ahab after the 3 of famine with no rain, like Matrix rain, all right, that's where they get rain from. He actually went to the east side of the Jordan, and Christ came from the east to the west in his, you know, when the second coming of the Son of Man, like lightning from the east to the west. So crossing the river Jordan, Elijah went from being fed with ravens and crows on the east side. He actually helped a Samaritan woman, and the Samaritan woman, her was revived by Elijah, and then they were fed with oil and flour, bread, and then after being fed by ravens and then fed with bread, The Samaritan woman, he went over to the west side to confront King Ahab, and then that's where the Mount Carmel and the prophets of Baal and Elijah and the Lord, and then all the prophets of Baal were killed, and then Jezebel was like, I'm going to kill all of you, kind of thing. I'm going to get rid of you. But then the Lord had prophesied that Ahab would die because he didn't do what the Lord said, and so dogs would lick his blood where he was shot by an arrow, and he bled to death. You know, Abaddon with the stinging arrows, with the bow and arrow, all right, stinging people. So he bled to death. If you're stung, you might be bleeding to death unless the Lord gives you a blood transfusion and you're saved and he takes it out of you if you can be saved. Just like the nose thing, that the brain scratching lobotomy stick, like the Egyptian lobotomy stick that they put into people to test people if they were not healthy. And so his blood, he died, like Absalom was stabbed to death, and dogs licked his blood. But Jezebel, there was a plot of land that Jezebel bought or had somebody killed to have a garden right next to the place where she was at. And so this garden, literally, Jezebel killed a man in order for Ahab to get it. He claimed it, and then God said, well, you killed this man, and now you're going to take his inheritance too? Well, you're going to die now because of it. And so that's why God killed Ahab, because he led Israel to false Babylonian worship with these different gods. And Jezebel was the Jezebel, like the woman harlot riding the beast. And so he prophesied that she'd die, and then dogs would eat her, and then the only thing left was the palms of her hands. So the palms of her hands represented her wickedness, and that's why Amazon, like the Tower of Babel, literally they made a Tower of Babel Amazon building. They have the palm scanners. It's like the mark of the beast. So only her palms were left, and so that's like the palm tree. The largest seed in the world is the palm tree coconut, and the smallest seed is actually duckweed, which is smaller than like a grain of sand, like dust, really, and then it overtakes ponds and it chokes it all out, like water lilies. That's where they get the water lily symbol from. I pet goat too. And the lily also is like a cone, like a pine cone, which represents the pineal gland in the brain. That's why the Pope in the Vatican, they have the staff with the pine cone, which represents the third eye, like the all-seeing eye, like our connection to the Lord versus a connection to the enemy. All right? So when you're saved, the Lord, you know, it connects you to himself instead of being connected to the false Babylonian beast system matrix, first and then being connected with technology like the matrix. And so, yeah, these plants, the largest seed and the smallest seed, is representative of like the duck, like Donald Duck, like Donald Duck orange juice. And Donald Duck orange juice actually is representative of the orange 47th president with the orange bronzer. And people don't know the Rothschilds, they funded Israel to begin with orange groves. And then they brought in Palestinians to help with the orange groves. And an orange is round like the ball earth lie, and it's covered with orange skin, like the snake. And you peel off the skin in order to eat the wedges. And like the four corners of the earth, but there's more corners to an orange. But that's why the Trump is covered in his orange bronzer. An orange in gematria, you add up all the numbers, what mean A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals C equals 33. All right, so it all connects with the 33, the helical heart, the being in the belly of earth, like, you know, the middle or the center. That's where they get the symbolism of, you know, journey to the center of the earth, or like Kong, you know, with going and then it's all upside down, and all that movie imagery and symbology. So yeah, they brought in the Palestinians and Israelites, and they were growing orange groves. And then in 1948, apartheid happened with the black and white. So Southern Africa had the apartheid where whites were ruling over the blacks, and Nelson Mandela was against it. And so he wasn't really for Israel. So that's, and apartheid happened in 1948, right when Israel became a state again in May 14, 1948, which is interesting. And then the Palestinians were grouped over to the west side of Israel. And it says in the Bible that the Antichrist would worship not the God that his fathers or women love, but the God of fortresses, you know, might, of conquest, which America represents, like colonialism. Literally like England, and then America, the redcoats are coming. all right, covered in Christ's blood versus the redcoats. That's where that symbology comes from. Like Rahab in Jericho, she put down her red string because she helped the spies. And so they came and went around Jericho 7 times and the walls came tumbling down. But when the Israelites went against AI, which is artificial intelligence, Achan took Babylonian goods in a robe and gold and silver, like gold and silver, Nebuchadnezzar's head and his body, the 47th element, the 47th president. And the robe represented Christ's spirit's covering, but the demonic covering of the enemy, Satan. And so literally were defeated by AI, and then they brought Achan up and, separated the wheat from the chaff, and then Achan was found out. Family, his children, who probably aided and abetted him, were found to be guilty, and so the earth opened up and swallowed him and all of the stuff that he took from Babylon, and then Israel went against Ai and they won. And so Mystery Babylon is going to be broken into 3 pieces. All right? And in one day, it will consume the head, like Nebuchadnezzar's statue, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and all of the world's shipping will mourn over the great city that fell. And so it's almost like America with the Dust Bowl. They weren't growing crops. They weren't following the Sabbaths and the Sabbath years of rest for, growing all the soil and stuff like that. Like Bill Gates and his agendas, like Agenda 2030 and depopulation, he owns almost all the farmland in the United States, and they're using salt fertilizers too much instead of letting the land loaf, or, monoculture instead of separating, doing different crops and rotating, like, and so all of that caused the Dust Bowl. Everything dried up and it flew into the ocean. The angel that came down and said, this great millstone will be thrown into the ocean, and a millstone is used for grinding, wheat and grain, just like the basket, the middle of America, okay? The heartland is what they call it. And so America will be split into 3 pieces. There will be a great earthquake, and the city of Babylon, the head, will literally fall in one day with fire, almost like the Vatican, which is the papacy dragon. And literally Trump, the last Trump, he went over and met with the Pope in the Vatican. And then the Pope got bronchitis, and the chemical element on the periodic table of elements is lead. Pb is lead, the 82nd periodic element. And so, peanut butter, Pope bronchitis. All right, so that's where that comes from. He met with them, and on the Pope's desks was a water lily crocus seed pod. So, literally, they met over like a checkered, like a checker thing. Like there was like this square thing, and it had checkers. Their Masonic symbolism, black and white duality, like, tic-tac-toe, a cat's game kind of thing. That's why Antichrist was obsessed with tic-tacs, like pills, like the Matrix. All right. Wow. But Mystery Babylon will be split into 3 pieces, and that I'm not sure if I think it's after the Tangs, with the Antichrist, and so they'll have to build bridges in between the gaping, it's like the Mississippi and something else. It might crack through there, like, cracking head, like, the Antichrist wants to crack into people's skulls like eggshells and fry their, like, eggs. Like, that's what a brain is. And that's where they got the video game Death Stranding, is building bridges, genetics, and America. So that's where they got that symbol. So I do believe America is Mystery Babylon in tandem with Rome. They say all roads lead to Rome, but I don't follow Babylon Brick Road into the Wizard of Oz. All right? And so, yeah. I mean, it's all connected. Like the Nebuchadnezzar's tree, it was cut down, and then he was brought back to his sanity. And his fingers grew long, nails, and that's where they got claws from. Like, animals with claws, they go and grab their animals to eat. So that's what predation is. So the enemy symbolizes predation, like their dinosaur eye. A lot of people don't know that the large bones, they made fake bones and heads, and they couldn't have fit on the ark, nor, dinosaur eggs. So people believe in evolution like humans came from apes. They don't believe in evolution with Christianity, but where did chickens come from? All right, they say that chickens came from the T-Rex, that they evolved from it. So how in the heck did dinosaurs get put on Noah's Ark, like the Ark encounter? It's fake. Dinosaurs are fake. Literally, let's see. It was Sir Richard Owen who came up with the concept of dinosaurs in 1842. And he imagined large creatures, and then he somehow came up and found bones immediately afterwards. And so that's where they went with that lie right there. And so 1842 reminds me of 42, Elisha, 2 Kings 2, with the 40 children. All right, and then the female bear mauled them to death, like Darth Maul in Star Wars. All right, just like Anakin trying to kill the children with his lightsabers, the younglings, is what they call lightsaber. It's like predation, like using like Spaceballs, the movie, the Schwartz. They represent the phallus, like they said the Schwartz was a lightsaber and it was a phallus. All right, so they were fighting with their obelisks, their sticks, okay? And the enemy perverts creation and says, oh, creation is just pleasure. The Lord made creation for his good pleasure, but it was for love first. Procreation is for love. And so the enemy made this holism of phallus and hypersexualization, and all these towers of Babel are obelisks, and they're representative of like an erecting buildings. So it's literally all, like computer towers of Babylon, like the enemy trying to terraform creation into something just that's pleasurable before he's put to death for eternity. That's what it is, really. And so a stick like morning wood is where they get the perversion from. Like, oh, you got morning wood. Or a wet, the evil spirit comes into them to try and, make them think of demonic sexual things. And so instead of, being with a wife in a loving relationship and having that trust, a trust building exercise where first love and then trust, procreation, and then pleasure is the outcome, really. And then a child whom you love as yourself. That it is. So procreation is representative of the Lord's creation and having us experience it, but without him doing it directly, like he made Adam and Eve. Breathed into Adam's nose. So that's why they're obsessed with the nose. Like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Rudolf Mengele in Germany, who stitched twins together and did all those experiments like the Twin Towers in the New York City. So with New York City, the Twin Towers came down like the Nebuchadnezzar's dream with the two iron legs, and then one came up, the One World Freedom Tower. And if you look at the One World Freedom Tower, it looks like the shell of a, what is it? Oh yeah, it looks like the shell of a bacteriophage, which is a virus. Literally, it injects itself into bacteria and then replicates itself. And once it's replicated enough, the bacteria explodes, and then a whole bunch of copies go out and they connect onto other bacteria or other cells around them, and then they inject their genetic code. This is why they call it a virus, and then it recreates itself and it causes an imbalance. So it cells, and unchecked cells or unchecked procreation is like the Lord either blesses people like making his children like numerous as the sands on the seashore, or literally unchecked procreation that's demonic. It chokes people out, like water lily, growing in the water. It chokes out all the plant life and causes it to become what's it called? It becomes less oxygenated, so mosquitoes grow. And mosquitoes, they literally bite people and drink their blood like a vampire. Oh, thank you. Yep. Just like a dog. You calling me a dog? The Lord rebuke you. And Lord rebuke you, Muslim, whatever. All nonsense. The enemy, he would have a, flood from the dragon's mouth, which literally is like spiritual locusts, like eyes, or saying, oh, don't be a Christian kind of thing. But the Lord, they can have their own thing, whatever. If the Lord saves them, I pray. But if not, then I'm not going to deal with it. The Lord rebuke you. Yeah, the enemy, he actually, the Lord has been giving me all this information, and I've been trying to decipher together, like put in, together the puzzle pieces, if you will. And so I had a lot of gang stalking online with demonic accounts or people who are possessed, literally making fun of me, like calling me schizo or schizophrenic. Literally is what they're calling me. After I made a post about Neo with the Matrix kind of thing. It's like, they say, oh, well, he's an incoherent rambler. But to me, I understand it kind of makes sense, but I try to say things to have it make sense to the people who are actually watching, in order to, hopefully the Lord leads them to the truth and gives them some understanding with the connections that I'm making. But the point is, everything connects together ritually. The enemy has his as above, so below, and his so below versions are mock with the Lord, but he tries to sugarcoat it and paint it white and try and make it look good. And so, like the sugar-coated prosperity gospel versus the Lord's actual provision. Once saved, always saved, which is a justification to sin. Or some people go as far as saying, oh, well, if you do good works, you're not saved because you don't need anything actually to be saved. But that's a complete lie, because when you're saved, you're reborn, the Lord leads you to repentance, and he leads you to do good works, which isn't about actually being saved, because no one can boast. It's only what the Lord has provided for us that we can do things with. And so he provides us with a new, mind, a body, heart, soul, and we're reborn from soul to spirit and living in the spirit, so we can be reborn in righteousness, slave to righteousness versus a slave to sin. So if we're not a slave to righteousness, we are part of the enemy, and the enemy's hive mind that he's trying to connect digitally with, brain chips, being part of a hive mind with quantum computing, like the Borg, like transhumanism. Really, that's what it is. GMO transhumanism, changing people's genetics and cells and patenting it, which that's what GMOs are with Monsanto, like Monsanto. Literally, they made GMOs and they patented the technology. But what happened when, people got warp speed? It made their cells produce, proteins that normally the blood couldn't make. So the body fought against itself. So a body divided cannot stand. And so this body divided cannot stand is like them cutting the head off and laying off their body workers with automation. So that's what they want to do, and have everyone under a universal income, under an artificial intelligence, a technological oligarchy. And they want to get rid of 90% of the population with, but they only want people who will upkeep the machine so they can enjoy, whatever. Like being divisive. That's what your name means. Like dev, like the online term, like the dev, DEV, is devil, literally is for like a blog term, administrator, like the enemy trying to control what people can and can't say and take away freedom of speech and silence God's children, trying to lead them astray like a false shepherd. The Lord rebuke you. But we are free will by the Lord, and the enemy's trying to take it away, just like Nebuchadnezzar had his freedom to be good or bad taken away when the Lord made him graze cow like an ox in the field. And so when Elijah, he had the Lord had Elijah in against the prophets of Baal, he went over to Elisha. Elisha was plowing the fields with 2 oxen. And 2 oxen is like oxide. So the Lord breathed into Adam's nose, and carbon is actually, carbon-based life forms is what they call us instead of clay-based life forms like made Adam out of, like Adam ant, okay? And so carbon is made out of 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. 6. So carbon-based life forms means not being reborn in spirit and only living in the flesh. And so they literally have something called carbon oxide, and carbon oxide glows in the dark under a UV light. And so that's what I think that they might make the mark of the beast. They'll press it on the right hand of the forehead, and unless you get it, you can't buy or sell, and it's going to be a dry patch that they'll say will keep you from getting sick. And so once it's pressed with microneedles, they'll press and take it off, and it'll be invisible ink. So unless you have a UV light shown on, your forehead, it won't light up. So any other light, you literally won't see it, okay? But with the UV light, you'll be able to see the mark, okay? That's what it'll be. It'll be another pandemic. And carbon oxide, the Lord breathed oxygen into Adam's nose, and so that's why they put the nose test with people. And it might have had carbon and the oxide, that glows under a UV light. And when I asked the Lord to take he pulled 2 lines of lead out of my nose and my stomach, and I was like, what is going on? But then I found out that what was in it was called luciferase, which is carbon oxide, in the nose test. And literally, that's what the brain scratch is what I read on 7 Grains of Salt Ministry, that somebody posted it. Like, I got 2, scratches, brain scratchers kind of thing. And I actually had a prophetic dream of this. It's like ground beef, and it was on a ship. And then the ground beef, there was some animal that got ground up, and it was some kind of predatory animal that had claws, and it went on there, and it was literally sitting on the ground beef as ground up animal, and then the animal tried to eat the beef, and then it just went and became part of itself, kind of thing. So it was like kind of representative of the Mystery Babylon and the ship, and then the chaos, order out of chaos, like, America, the canal, the Antichrist trying to make the Club of Rome, the 10 kings, with the harlot, which is riding the beast, which is like the harlot riding the beast is Haman had 10 sons and 1 daughter, and Haman was put on a sharpened pole after with Esther, and I know Purim is coming up here with the fast of Esther, and so Esther won with Mordecai against Haman, the wicked Haman. His 10 sons were put to death and hanged to death, and then his 1 daughter, I'm not sure what happened to her, but so literally the 10 kingdoms, the Club of Rome, the 10 principalities is what the Antichrist is going to be ruling with the harlot. So like the daughter and the 10 sons with Haman. And so I know after the Nuremberg trials with Cost, there were 10 people on trial. No, I think it was 11 people. So there was 11 people who were hung, and one of them was a cross-dresser, a female, acting like a female, representative of Haman's 10 sons being hung with the cross-dresser female, the transhumanism. So that's where it came from. So with the ships going around the sea and North America, and the cargo ships, is what the Panama Canal trying to be taken over represents, is like the canal. Like the woman giving birth to the man-child, mocking Christ Jesus, when he had to flee to Nazareth after the king tried to kill all the children 2 years younger during that time. And so, I believe the Mystery Babylon, the head, will be the head wound was first, like the ear with July 13th, which was Caesar's birthday. The last Trump got the ear wound, the head wound. But then it'll also be like, the northeast side of America, maybe some kind of explosive. I don't know. But, there was one person, a brother in Christ, who he had a channel called City on a Hill, and he said he had a prophetic dream of the devil saying, I want to get rid of one city, and one city was, atomically destroyed within a minute or an hour, and that's what Mystery Babylon is. So when Mystery Babylon is split into 3 pieces, it's like America, like the bread bowl in the middle of America. And so Mystery Babylon will be destroyed in one day, and the whole world will wonder, because they were relying on it with for food and pearls and all this stuff, but that's kind of going away with like the tariff wars kind of thing. But I think what the tariffs wars are what's happened, they're trying to make the people suffer, and then they'll propose a solution, which is the North American Union, which will bring forth the 10 Club of Rome sections of like Agenda 2030. And so that's like Haman's 10 sons. So the 10 kings and the 10 sons riding against the Lord's children, Jerusalem. All right, that's where it comes from. And then the wicked daughter of Haman, his 11th child, is like the harlot riding the beast. That's what that means. Hopefully that's coherent enough for people to understand. Unlike that movie where they say, oh, well, that wasn't coherent and it made absolutely no sense, you'll win no points. It's like, whose line is it anyways? That's why the enemy's trying to confuse language and make a mockery out of everything. So, anyways, I need to get back to work. Amen, God bless, and take care. Take it easy.